Welcome, everyone. Today on the show, I had the honor of chatting with Mr. Walter Jon Williams, the author of the new Jedi Order series, Destiny's Way. Let me tell you, this book is my favorite in the series so far. He did a phenomenal job with this. And throughout our conversation, we get some of the insight and background of what it was like writing this and working with the story group, amongst his other projects and interest, his martial arts background, and some of the other books he's wrote. This gentleman is highly creative and very talented, and it was so much fun. I want to say thank you for your guys' support. It means so much to me. And without further ado, Mr. Walter Jon Williams. It'll just be a fun conversation. I'm very excited to talk with you. It's
Well,
an
thank
honor.
you.
Yeah.
It's great to be here.
When I when I reached out to you the first time, I really
Mm,
wanted to talk to you right then because I was deep in the book and it was
uh-huh.
just a page turner for me. I have a little book club that I do with some of my local friends. So we're all reading the new Jedi Order series for the first time.
Okay. All right. Great.
Yeah. And then all three of us, when we got, I mean, I must say that there's a lot of great men and women that worked on this project that done great
Mm,
stuff. But when we got to your book, it was all of us, we couldn't put it, and we finished it in under a week. I mean, we were
uh-huh.
just, so it was great. And it's like, well, you know what? I'm going to reach out to Mr. Williams and see if he wants to just talk and have a good
Yeah.
conversation and have fun.
There was one guy who read it in the bookstore because this came out in hardback originally, and he couldn't afford a hardback.
Really?
So he speed read the entire book in the bookstore off a copy off the shelf. I don't think his comprehension was enhanced by this, just from the questions he was asking me, but I have to admire his dedication.
Yeah. That's brave. That I mean,
Yeah.
hopefully they let him use the bathroom while I was there.
Yeah.
So yeah, this came out originally back in 2002 in
Yeah.
hardback, like you said. That was
Mhm.
October, I believe.
Yeah.
22 years now.
Yeah.
22 years. Goes by
Yeah.
quick.
A lot of parsecs under the bridge.
Hey? Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's new with you, sir? How you been? How's things going?
I did okay during the pandemic. Uh, Only got COVID once, um, and I'm sort of getting back to my regular life now. Um,
Yeah.
it's kind of flooding in, so I'm busier than I'm used to being. And I'm working on some projects, and I had two books out last year, which I recommend to you all. Um,
Yes. I
one
will
one
link
particular I have. If you are into space opera, which Star Wars is, I do have a space opera series that begins with a book called The Praxis, and it's
yes.
either 6 or 8 books long now. And it depends on how you count them. There are 6 from one publisher, one that I
Okay.
published myself, and another from a yet another publisher. So the the first publisher doesn't want to count the ones that they don't publish. So
And you're coming out with another book to that series?
I'm not contracted for more right now, but I hope to be. Right now, I'm
And
working
you're,
on a totally different project that's like 25 years late, and it was
okay.
yeah. The third book never came out because my editor was fired and his fiction line was canceled,
Mm,
and then I was never able to sell the third book in the year since because nobody wants to publish a book that is the third in a series that was started by another
yes.
publisher. So
It seems like there's always issues when it comes to that type of thing with publishers. Like they always, it's kind of a shame, really,
yeah,
especially if the material's good.
right. I thought it was the best thing I wrote. It's a series that starts with Metropolitan and City on Fire, and the third book will be called Heaven in Flames,
Mm,
and it's a
I like
kind of
that title.
science fantasy.
That's what I like. I like
Mm,
science fantasy. That's kind of what
mm,
I'm drawn to. I like the good
right.
in because it all kind of intertwines, right?
Yeah. See,
There's
I
a little
thought it
bit in
was
all of it.
just fantasy, but people kept insisting on reading it as science fiction because it's got
Oh,
technology in it too. So okay, and so the term science fantasy I got coined for this book and some others like it.
Hmm, interesting. Yeah, you kind of started off with like you were writing historical style fiction, right?
Yeah, I wrote
And
historical sea adventure novels like
yeah,
Patrick O'Brien and C.S. Forrester and so
and then you
on.
will jump ship on that note, and then kind of went into the
Well,
fantasy and the science
I was
fiction.
made to walk the plank. I didn't jump
Yeah.
ship. Basically, the market for historical fiction completely collapsed in 1982 in April, um, and uh, and so I had to find another way of earning a living. And
Wow.
so I was shotgunning out proposals in all directions, trying to sell something. I was writing mysteries. I was doing literary fiction. I was doing other historical fiction because I hadn't realized that the market wasn't there anymore. And it was the science fiction proposal that sold.
Hmm.
So if the mystery had sold, my entire life would be different now.
Hey,
Yeah,
well, you never know.
yeah.
It's. Would you say? Let me ask you this: would you say things were easier back, we'll say in the 80s and the 90s compared to
Uh,
today when it comes to writing and trying to get your material out there? Or
I don't think it's ever been easy.
okay,
Um, it's now it's maybe a little easier because you have more options. You can self-publish,
yeah,
which back when I broke in the '80s was not not done seriously. There were vanity presses, and you would pay them to print your book, and then it would never appear. They would never appear in bookstores or anything because vanity presses, but booksellers would avoid vanity presses whenever possible. But now you have all of these online markets, and even though most people won't sell more than 200 copies of an ebook, um,
yeah, I prefer actually to purchase the book and have it rather than
yeah,
an ebook. I don't know, I just can't. I don't know if it's. I know they make filters and everything now for when it comes to reading on a tablet or a Nook or whatever your
uh, yeah,
piece of device that you have. But I don't know. I just love. I guess I'm old school. I love the feel of the book. I love having it. I love carrying it around with me.
mhm. I'm with you, and I love the smell of a new book. That's just really it
Yes.
speaks. There's enchantment on the way, right? But also, um, my library is full. I'm in my library right now,
Oh, I can
and there's new
imagine.
room for new books. I'd have to get rid of some of these, and I don't want to get rid of them because I love them. So I do most of my reading on a Kindle now,
Mm.
um, because it will hold a lot, and also I can travel with it. I used to have to travel with 50 pounds of books, and now I just have this little device.
I mean, you're right. It does make it convenient. I was actually having this conversation with my wife this morning because
Uh-huh.
she's been doing a lot of audiobooks. And then
Right.
she was talking about switching over because she's like, when I go to work or on break or if if I have to pick up one of the kids and wait, I can just pull it out and read it rather than now I have to
Mhm.
tote another book around. But I carry a little
Right.
backpack with me. So I don't care
Yeah.
either way. But
Yeah.
I guess it's up to whoever. It's your own personal preference, but I understand that
Yeah.
it makes sense. You can hold a lot more on it.
No, I find that I'm reading a lot thicker books now that I can carry them around on the Kindle.
Yeah.
The Tale of Genji, the classic Japanese novel. Maybe the first novel ever, but it's like 1,200 pages, and I
Yeah.
have it, and even in paperback, that'll break your toes if you drop it on your foot. And
Uh,
I could just see my back going out, and so it sat there on the shelf for years, and I just never picked it up. But once I could get it on the Kindle, I read it.
yeah. And you're right. I cracked myself laying in bed a few times that night with a hardback, dozing
Yeah.
off, and then it's like, "Ooh, boy, that doesn't feel good." I'll tell you what, it does not.
Mhm.
Um, how's the weather by you?
Well, we've been going through the same cold snap as the rest of the country,
Yeah.
although we haven't had well, I haven't had much snow. I live in the lower Rio Grande Valley, and so I'm only at 5,000 feet.
Ooh.
So most of the
Ooh.
snow has been for people who live above 7,000 feet,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, we got
they've
hit.
been hammered pretty hard. But we just got a dusting down here.
Yeah, we got a blizzard Friday.
Uh-huh.
10 plus inches.
Yeah, we got the blizzard too. We got everything that was in a blizzard except the snow.
Yeah.
We got
Well,
the
lucky
wind,
you.
we got the temperatures. There just wasn't any snow in it.
Yeah, I was outside for 2.5 hours yesterday, snow blowing. It
Oh
was
yeah,
rough.
wow,
Yeah.
yeah.
It was our first big
Fortunately, I
one.
don't have to worry about that because I don't have a snowblower. I have no way of clearing this stuff
A plow
other
truck would
than a
be good,
shovel,
but
I suppose. But yeah.
yeah. Well, who wants to
We
do
get
that?
snow maybe 3, 4 times a year where I live, and it's usually melted within hours.
Yeah. Is that well, you were saying you were originally from Minnesota, so you're close to me.
I
So
am,
you
yeah.
you understand the
Oh, yeah.
upper weather and then yeah.
Yeah, as soon as I was physically able to carry a snow shovel, my parents, dumped that duty on me,
Yes, sir. Same here. Same
and then
here.
had the gall to criticize my work, saying,
Yeah, it was never good
I
enough.
hadn't cleared the whole sidewalk.
Yes. I've heard that a lot, or I used to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, you know what, sir? This is, first I want to say thanks for
Oh,
writing
sure.
such a great novel, and obviously you've won awards. You've been nominated for a lot. You also
Mhm.
do a writer the Taos Toolbox, correct? Where you get writers to come and
Taos Toolbox.
Sile,
Yeah,
yes,
it's a master class for people who want to write science fiction and fantasy, and
yeah.
I've been doing it since 2007. This year is gonna be the last year. The
Oh,
workshop may continue, I just won't be running it. But, anyway, we've turned out a lot of really great writers.
yeah. I was digging into that a little bit because
Uh-huh.
it's always good. Like, I can just tell that you have that great presence and somebody that you wanna be around, and you give off, good vibes, and you're knowledgeable, and you've been in the business for a long time. So I can just imagine what it's like being around that environment with all these
Mhm.
different creative people, the creative ideas that they come up with, and then you help shape
Yeah.
and mold and give them insight. I bet you it's a blast.
Yeah, and some of them are just so ready to go. They just need a little extra motivation, they need a little extra tweaking, or they've written something great, but they don't know how to sell it,
Yeah.
right? And I can really help with that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, this is a place where they come it's like kind of like a resort style. It's like
We have held it at resorts. Yeah, it turns out that in the summertime you can rent an entire ski resort for really cheap.
yeah, that's well, imagine so with no snow.
Yeah, yeah, but it has become different. It's become very expensive. It didn't used to be as expensive as it is now. So now it's actually at a um, uh, uh, residential hotel in Albuquerque,
Mm,
which is not nearly as scenic as the mountain resorts, but there are a
yeah,
lot more conveniences around. There are shopping centers. There are supermarkets. There are lots of
everything's
restaurants.
convenient. It's a
Yeah,
convenient
yeah,
area. Yeah.
and
That
it's kind
helps.
of a lot less work for everybody, so they can concentrate on the fiction, which is why they're there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great thing that you put together and with the team, and it'll be good. Hopefully that carries on for
Yeah.
people because that's always beneficial.
Mhm.
It's always beneficial.
Applications opened on the 1st of January.
Oh,
So, and will continue through the 1st of April. So, if you wanna submit, by all means. If
yeah.
anyone out there in podcast land
Yeah, I'll
wanna
link
give
it,
this a try, yeah.
I'll link everything in the
Taos
description for you.
Toolbox, Taos Toolbox.
Now is that term, is that something you wanted to implement because of your martial arts background?
Um, well, Taos is a town in northern New Mexico, and it was
Oh,
held at their ski resort originally, Taos Ski Valley, which is
Oh,
about
okay.
10,000 feet in the mountains, but it was very isolated. But the people who were running the lodge were just very supportive, and unfortunately they retired, and they got it got turned over to a management company who jacked up the prices and who didn't understand that the prices in the summer should be lower than when there's high demand in the winter. So I moved to another resort, and then if you remember, a few years ago, New Mexico was burning down. It had one of the largest forest fires ever, and it
Yes.
was aimed right at where we were going to have the resort. And I didn't think it was going to get there. I thought we'd be perfectly fine, but I couldn't promise that we were going to be perfectly fine. So
Yeah,
that's when
yeah.
I moved it to Albuquerque.
Well, that's all right.
Yeah, got to do your due diligence if you're looking after people.
That's right. That
Yeah,
100%. So the martial arts background.
yeah.
I love martial arts. I've always been a
Uh,
fan of it as a kid. And you're a black belt in Kenpo Karate.
yeah. I'm a sixth degree black belt in Kenpo Karate. I've been doing it for over 40 years.
Yeah. What sparked you to do that? Is there something from childhood where
Well, I was always interested in it. I
yeah?
did judo when I was a teenager, and I don't know. A friend of mine had got involved, and I was looking for a exercise form that wasn't boring. Um, I tried them all, and they were all boring. And when you're sort of dancing around the deck, trying not to let somebody kick your head off,
Yeah.
that is not boring. I guarantee.
It's not.
No.
Did you ever compete?
No. Well, I did, but um, almost reluctantly because I was over 30
Well,
and competing with these young guns
well,
in a style of fighting that they excelled at and I didn't. I mean, I was I became much more of a street fighter than a tournament fighter.
oh, I
Although, once
the
again,
sounds of
I've
that.
never had an occasion to use it on the street, but that was kind of where my interest is. I wanted the real practical, real life applications, and there's a lot
Well,
of that in Kempo.
yes. I did a little taekwondo for a while
Mhm.
and I got my kids involved in something we were gonna do together, but
Uh-huh.
COVID happened
Yeah.
and they shut it down and then it was gonna be like an online thing. And it's like, well,
Mhm.
I want the experience. There's
Yeah.
something I mean, don't get me wrong, like streaming and everything, like podcasting like we're doing now, there's a lot
Mhm.
of great things that came from it, but
Yeah.
something like that, you
Yeah.
have to be there, like you said.
We did like social distance karate for like a year, but everyone had a 6 foot by 6 foot square that
Yeah.
they were obliged to stay in during class, and you could teach, but you couldn't do hands on. You couldn't do sparring. But so what my instructor did was he started concentrating really hard on the technical aspects.
Mm,
The real minutia of how you launch a kick or a punch, and
yeah.
and they got amazingly good at it. That was what they worked at for a year without any other distractions. And so,
Wow.
technically, these people ended up being the best class I'd ever seen.
Well, yeah, when you really put effort into that, and where
Yeah.
where your stance comes from and the power and the
Mm,
momentum and how it all comes from,
right.
the ground up and
Yeah.
your breathing techniques, that's a big part of it
Mhm.
too.
Oh, yeah.
And how just the
Mhm.
force that would, yeah,
Mhm.
that's, yeah, when I learned that, because I always like to read. After I read a book, I always like the little author notes in the back. Gives it a,
Mhm.
because I want to know who this
Yeah.
person is. Obviously, that's one thing I love about doing this because you find out so much more.
Mhm.
Right? Like, you have
Oh, yeah.
more layers to you than okay, probably people didn't know you were 6th-degree black belt. You wrote
Mhm.
other novels, and you've been involved, and you taught a class. So,
Uh-huh.
it's just interesting to me, and I just like to have a fun conversation and get a little bit
Mhm.
of your background, if you don't mind, and we'll
Oh, yeah,
carry on
that's
into
fine.
Star Wars. Yeah, it's
But
fun.
you will see a lot of, sort of quotations from my then teacher, in the Star Wars book.
Yeah?
Always
It
defend the space that is not attacked. That's one of his mottos. And this is the late Grandmaster Bill Packer, who died in 2005.
Mm. That's who taught
But he
you.
was a champion in every sense.
Yeah. You studied under him? Is that was one of your
I did,
teachers?
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So did you stay with the whole like the same organization or the
It's the same organization, although after Bill Packer died,
passed away?
there was, a fair amount of fragmentation that happened, but I'm staying with the same people in the same town.
Yeah. Yep, the
Yeah.
same group, and yeah, that's
Mhm.
always good. Then you get to build that relationship with them and help each other. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you taught classes as well? Like, did you?
I have, though not recently,
Yeah.
but I used to teach an advanced class, and then I went for a couple weeks abroad on a trip, and I came back, and the Grand Master had taken over my class, and you can't say no to the Grand Master,
No.
and I wanted to learn from him, so I joined the class. I mean, I became a student.
Well, yeah. I mean, if it's a
Yeah,
grandma, yeah, you can't challenge that.
no.
So, what was your first interest into, we'll say, space opera or fantasy?
Mhm.
Like when you wanted to, what was the when was that moment where you knew you wanted to be
I
a writer?
I was very young. As soon as I knew what a writer was, I wanted to be that. So I was maybe 4 or 5 years old, because I couldn't even write yet. I didn't know how to write, and I didn't know how to read. So I would dictate stories to my parents, who would write them down for me, and then I get out my
Really?
crayons and illustrate them. And fortunately, few of those efforts have survived.
Really?
Yeah.
Hmm.
No, it's I would probably dread looking at them.
Wow,
Uh,
come on. That's something special to
it it
still
sounds
have.
it sounds better than it was, I think.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So it's a little bright here. The sun was shining. It was gloomy before, but now it's coming out. So I
Uh-huh.
apologize if there's a
Yeah.
bright glare on me here next to a
No,
window.
no, that's fine.
So very young, you wanted to be a writer before you could read
Yeah,
or write.
yeah, and I was always attracted to science fiction and later fantasy. Um, and that I remember the first science fiction novel I read, it was, Have Spacesuit Will Travel by Robert Heinlein, which I still think is he was a fantastic author, particularly if you were a younger reader.
Mm,
And that is, as far as I'm concerned, his best book.
interesting. I've never read it. Never heard of it.
And well,
Mm-mm.
Heinlein was one of the greats. He was, Heinlein, Clarke, and Asimov were the 3 big names when I started reading this. And of course, there are plenty of other authors that I became acquainted with, including E. Doc Smith, who I think inspired Star Wars in many ways.
Mm,
He had a series of books about the Lensmen, who were essentially Jedi, and they were sort of a special, I don't know, special police unit, special unit of soldiers, something like that, that
mm.
were trying to defend the galaxy against another galaxy, and they had psychic powers that allowed them to communicate with each other and see what was going on. And they were zooming around in spaceships and fighting battle moons that very much resembled the Death Star. And this is
Really?
written in the 20s and 30s, right? And I
Wow.
think George Lucas was exposed to this at a certain point and just thought it was cool.
Cool. Yeah. I had a conversation with Joe Bongiorno, and he was
Uh-huh.
giving me some insight on space opera and the different
Uh-huh.
aspects where, like you were saying, George Lucas kind of took
Yeah, yeah,
some of this and molded it and shaped it in his own way.
yeah, yeah. You can trace both Star Wars and Star Trek back to a couple of writers in the 20s who kind of defined the form. And E. Smith was one of them, and I
I
blanked
know
on the
it.
name of the other one. I'm sorry. I've even written an introduction to one of his collections, but but basically it was stories of he wrote stories of the Space Patrol, right? And there was like a bridge crew that had humans and aliens,
Oh,
and there were women officers on this ship. Um, and it's clearly evolved into Star Trek.
yeah. See, that's one thing I never really got into with Star Trek. Not I have
Uh-huh.
nothing against it, but I
Right.
just never I like that like we were talking earlier, like, I like the mixture with the
Mhm.
fantasy and the sci-fi
Yeah,
together.
yeah. Mhm.
So nothing against Trekkies, I'm all
Right.
for you. I
Okay.
just but yeah, I've always heard I need to do a little more research and dig in and read some of these classic stories that you
Mhm.
gentlemen tell me about
Yeah.
because it seems like they're very interesting and very good.
In all the most of these cases, the writing isn't very good because the
Well,
editors weren't paying for good writing, they were paying for fast writing. Um,
yeah.
and so I worked it out once. If you were a pulp writer in the 20s or 30s, whatever, in order to earn a basic living, you would have to write 20 pages a day, finished pages,
Oh,
and do
that's
that forever.
see, I don't think that's a
And
good idea.
no, no, it's not. And I really admire the people who could stick that out for any length of time.
Yeah,
Um,
that's I would want
I couldn't.
quality.
I'm a slow writer, so I
Yeah,
would have
I
to
was
find
just gonna
another way.
ask you that.
Yeah.
Have you ever had an issue where you were on, somebody "Hey, we need to get this done by such and
Mhm.
such?" Was there
I
ever an
have
issue for
I have blown a few deadlines, but
okay.
it generally, editors are perfectly reasonable about it because it happens all the time. The thing is you have to tell them.
Hmm,
Just call them up and say, "I'm sorry, this book is gonna be late by a couple of months," whatever, and they're generally okay with that. They can readjust the schedule if they need to. Um, the thing that you want to avoid is being late and not telling them that you're gonna be late,
yeah,
because then once
you're
you
gonna
start lying to them about when you're gonna deliver and all of that, they're yeah, that's a trust issue that, it's broken trust
yeah,
is not
you're
gonna come back.
burning your bridges basically,
Yeah, yeah.
and then that'll just travel on to the next publisher or
Mhm.
group that you wanna work for.
Uh-huh. Like, I delivered my Star Wars book by the deadline, and but I think 3 books before mine were all late. So I never got to read them
Oh,
before I wrote my own book because they weren't
really?
complete. Yeah, and had I known what was gonna be in those books, I probably would have adjusted my book a bit.
Well, I don't I'll be honest with you, sir.
Okay.
So I was gonna say, your book picked up perfectly from Trader
Oh,
was the
good.
book
Well,
before yours by
mhm.
Matthew Stover, and it just
Yeah.
the flow of it was perfect, I
Mhm.
thought. So that amazes me that
Oh,
you
good.
didn't
Okay.
get I was well, let's segue right into this then. So how did you
Yeah.
get involved in this project?
Um, the, uh, the the people in charge may have been at Del Rey Publishing, may have been at Lucasfilm, decided they wanted to get some new names, involved, and, um, and mine came up, and usually I don't get a chance to do side projects like this because I'm committed, sometimes for years in advance. I mean, I just
Yeah.
got off a 6-book deal, which is finally over, and but that 6-book deal took 6 years to do, and during which time I could have no side projects. But the offer came just at a moment when I didn't have any other projects in the pipe, and I could devote myself to it. And then so, after I agreed, flew out to Lucasfilm for meetings, um, with, some of the other authors and editor and all the folks at Lucasfilm, and sort of hammered out, an outline. And the way it worked, because this was like a 20-book arc, New Jedi
Yeah.
Order,
Yep.
There were certain things that had to happen in my book. Certain people had to die. There had to be a big battle at the end. That Republic had to win the battle. Uh, Anything else that happened was kind of up to me, and
Oh,
my interpretations of the characters were kind of up to me. So I wasn't just writing as a formula dictated. I was able to have some genuine creative input in this. And then as soon as I signed the contract, large parcels began to appear on my doorstep. Actually, great big boxes full of books. So there's the Star
okay.
Wars Encyclopedia and the Star Wars Guide to Droids and the Star Wars Guide to Spaceships and the Star Wars Guide to Planets and all of this reference material that I was supposed to somehow absorb and regurgitate.
Oh,
Um,
that would have
so
been.
I, I still have a very large box full of that stuff in my garage somewhere, just in case I need it again. Uh, Although it's probably all well, they're not doing new Jedi Order, so it's um,
Well,
probably
it
redundant now.
yeah. Well, ever since Disney bought it, I think they,
Mm,
all they consider that legends now. So then all that now they have a new canon
yeah,
that they're writing. But
yeah,
yeah,
and the
yeah,
and
some
and the
of it's
writers
still
aren't getting paid. Mm,
yeah, all this stuff going on. But
well,
that must have been wild to receive all. I mean, they just gave it up
oh,
and
and it
said, "Here
didn't
you
stop
go."
coming. It went on for weeks. Huge boxes would
That's
just turn up and go, okay, another 2,000 pages I have to memorize.
yeah.
And of course, the earlier books in the series they were sending to me also as they came out.
So did you read the books? Bef
I I
Some of
read the
them,
first
actually?
one. I read the first
Yeah,
one. The rest I didn't have time to read, but I skimmed them all.
okay. But they obviously
They
they
were coming
kinda
out
told
pretty
you
fast.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
they must have had an outline, I would assume, r like you had mentioned, certain characters
Mhm.
had to die.
Yeah.
Vergere, which
Mhm.
that I did not see that coming, honestly.
Mhm.
That was a great scene, and is that something that how you wanted that character to die? Like, basically
I I'm sorry, I
kamikaze?
didn't catch the character. Who?
Vergere? Vergere?
Oh,
The
Vergere.
Vergere. Yeah, some Vergere,
Vergere.
some
Yeah,
people say
okay.
Vergere. Yep.
Um, I wanted it to be a surprise in any number of ways that,
It surprised the hell out of me.
that Vergere just was appearing in the middle of this battle,
Yeah.
and eventually Jason realized, "Wait, you're dead."
Yeah.
Right, and so it was a huge surprise to him, not to the reader who had seen what preceded, but,
Right.
I wanted to have that kind of shocking realization there.
Yeah, it blew me away.
Mhm.
So you got me on that one. Was that character was that character talked about in any of the meetings? Like it because there was some mystery
Yeah.
to Vergere. We
Mhm.
get information about her in the book
Yeah,
that
I don't I don't
she's
wanna give
actually a
you spoilers if you're reading the series, but, yeah, she
yeah.
is intended to be a mysterious character,
Yes.
from a species that hasn't, been encountered before, and you get a lot more of her backstory later on in the series.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's yeah. Right now, I'm on the Force Heritage, so I'm on the books after
Yeah,
yours. I'm not finished
yeah,
with it yet, but
right.
you got to kill off. Well, there's going to be spoilers, just so anybody knows about the book.
Mm, yeah,
So cover your ears, I guess. But
yeah,
Tsavong Lah, the War
right.
Master for the Vong.
Mhm,
I didn't think he was
yeah.
ever going to die.
Well, he had to die for the same reason that Obi-Wan had to die, right?
Mm.
If Obi-Wan doesn't die, then it's not Luke's story, it's Obi-Wan's story.
Yeah.
So when Shimra turned up, you know, the War Master had to go because it's not his
Yes.
story anymore.
No. And that was
Uh,
that was
yeah,
intense.
and I decided to pull a switcheroo because he died, in combat with Jason, but it had been set up,
Yeah.
to have another Skywalker, be that character's kind of potential enemy. But I just
Mhm.
wanted to say anything can happen. Chewbacca can die. You know that this is
Yes.
supposed to be a new way to do Star Wars was this series
Yeah.
because they
It's
didn't want it to
great.
get stale. Yeah.
It's incredible. Now, knowing that you obviously knew the whole outcome. They sent you everything that they were looking for
Mhm.
your book, but
Yeah.
you obviously know what happens at the end. You already know that.
Yeah. Mhm.
Did you have any ideas of where the stories could have went after that? Like after the New Jedi Order
After
series?
New Jedi Order or just after my
Yeah.
book?
No, after New Jedi Order. Like, was there
It
any
was under
talks?
discussion, but they hadn't made any decisions.
Okay.
There were, um, I remember there was one writer who particularly wanted, the next series to be the Revolt of the Droids, because basically we have these sentient machines that are slaves,
Yeah.
and maybe and once they get the idea that they shouldn't be slaves anymore, there's a lot of potential problems because they have a lot of power, these guys. So that would have made an interesting series, but it didn't happen.
Yeah, that does sound very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, this book there was a moment during the knighting ceremony.
Uh-huh.
Like, the way that you had described it, I felt like I was in the audience watching this.
Uh-huh.
It
Yeah.
was
Oh,
it
thank
was
you.
fantastic.
Mhm.
And then there was a moment with Luke and Jaina
Mm.
where he
Yeah.
spoke and he was like, "I can't believe I just said that out loud," where he referenced her as the sword of the Jedi. Like, basically,
Right.
she's gonna be the one
Mhm. I
that
have
takes
to
care of
say
them.
that particular moment wasn't me. I wasn't in charge at that point. The
Oh,
Force took over and dictated it. I
okay.
had no idea what Luke was going to say until that moment, and it felt
Really?
like another power had told me what he was gonna say. It was a really eerie feeling.
Really?
Yeah.
That's incredible to hear, sir.
Yeah. Well, imagine my surprise, because
Do you have moments?
I'm Mr. Plot Boy. I plan out everything in advance in incredible detail, and I had not planned this.
Okay.
So I think I was just so into the Star Wars milieu at that point that I was taking dictation from the Force.
Now, has this happened to you in other things that you write? Like, when you write, do you feel like
Not
you're
not not like this, no. I mean,
no?
I have a lot of spontaneous ideas that often end up in the books, but no, nothing this unprecedented, I don't think.
Oh. Yeah, I'm just kinda taken I didn't see that response coming. That kinda
Mhm.
took me back because that's great
Yeah.
that you have that. Like, it's almost like a special moment, like it's interesting to me how writers write, where they come up
Mhm.
with these ideas or where they feel it. Some authors say they feel like the characters are talking to them. Others say, well, they
Uh,
gotta like yourself, they gotta plot it out. They gotta like
uh-huh.
Sean Stewart, for example.
Right.
You're familiar with Mr. Stewart, right?
Oh, yeah,
From
yeah, we go way
you
back.
guys yeah,
We've
you
kinda
worked
lost
on
touch in recent years, but yeah,
you
we were
worked
good
on the
buddies.
ARG side of things
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
Yeah, Last
Oh,
Call
yeah.
Poker.
Last Call Poker. That was the most fun I've ever had in this business, was Last Call Poker.
Yeah, I I talked to Mr. Stewart. I had him on the channel
Mhm.
too.
Right.
Phenomenal. We talked for a long time and he brought up the ARGs and that whole style
Uh-huh,
of doing that seems like it would be so much
uh-huh.
fun.
Oh, it was enormous fun, and I also got 3 novels out of it, so that was pretty good.
Yeah.
There's a series that begins with "This is not a game," and then goes on to, Deep State and The Third Wall, and they're about, a puppet master who runs ARGs, and what happens when the created world that she's creating online starts to merge with the real world in unprecedented and really nasty ways.
Yeah. yeah, that whole experience of doing all that,
Mhm.
just incredible. I didn't mean to jump off topic of Star Wars, but
Yeah.
I wanted to throw
Yeah.
that
Oh,
in
that's fine.
there
Yeah.
because just I'm just curious, and inquire
Oh,
how the
yeah. No,
process works for you.
this is how conversation works. It's great.
Yeah, I love it
Yeah.
too. It's fun. I have a great time. Again, I want to thank you for taking time out for me. Truly, it means a lot,
Oh,
and
sure.
it's such an honor to talk with you. Um, it's a blast. But back to Destiny's Way.
Yeah.
Was that a title? Did you have any control over the title of the novel, or did they
Um,
already have all the titles
I
kind of
well,
planned out?
no, well, it was the sort of my original title, I think, was Destiny's Road,
Okay.
and they said there are no roads in space, so come up with another one. And I thought Destiny's Hyperspace Bypass just didn't sound right.
Yeah.
So I
That's
used
actually
way because there's a multiple meaning there. I mean, way could be a road or a lane or something, but it could also be
right.
the way, the Tao, the force.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. That's a question I haven't
Uh,
asked any of the other authors that I've spoke to that worked
yeah.
on the project. But I wasn't sure if they already had. Here's what the titles are going to be. You get this
No,
one. You get
no.
this one. No. Okay. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff that happened. I mean, the Alpha Red that they came up
Mhm.
with. You brought
Yeah,
back Admiral Akbar. He was in the play.
yeah,
Now, did
right.
you get to pick any of these characters to bring in?
Yeah, I brought in most of them. I mean, aside from, Tsavong Lah had to be there and had to die.
Yep.
Vergere had to die. Shimra had to show up. Um, and, and you had to deal with, the aftermath of the fall of the capital, right? And the beginnings of the Republic striking back.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just kind of sometimes at a loss for words because
Uh,
it felt like this should have been a movie. If
mhm.
that makes like
Well,
it
yeah,
was. I mean, it was
would
great.
wouldn't have done me any good because, I'm sure they wouldn't pay me for it, but they
Well,
own
they
the
should.
material as it is. Yeah,
Looking at
but
my
it would be
notes
something to
here.
point to. I could carve it in my tombstone.
Well, it's an accomplishment. That's for darn sure.
Yeah.
What about the short story? How did that
Oh,
all
yeah,
come about?
they were you have to remember this is 22 years ago, right? But,
Yeah,
they
no, right.
were
That's why I'm trying to be
exploring
vague.
the idea of electronic fiction, okay, because it hadn't really been established yet. So they wanted a story that was, um, that they could sell exclusively in electronic
Just
form.
for online, trying to push that.
Yeah. They were wanted to find out what would happen
Hmm.
because they didn't have readers yet. Maybe there was a Sony reader out there somewhere, um, but anyway, so that was the idea, and I realized that the story that I was thinking of would fit into Destiny's Way as a sort of missing episode.
Yeah.
And so it is basically a chapter in Destiny's Way, except it's not bound in there. It's uh, available separately.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't read that. I'll be honest. I didn't do
Mhm.
the ebook thing. I believe they had added it to one of the future books here in the line, like in the beginning of it. I
Yeah.
believe.
Yes, it was available in print in some odd place,
Yeah. I haven't got there yet.
along with like an old essay that I wrote on electronic fiction, um, that had been from years before, in which I was
Really?
basically saying that the technology is promising, but it hasn't been developed, right? And so when this ended up in print, it was like 2011, and everybody had a Kindle. And boy, I got angry email. How dare you say that this is, that
Oh,
essay is 10 years old, you know?
come on, people.
Yeah.
That's yeah. Yeah, you've done a lot of short story work too.
I have, yeah. I really like writing short fiction. Um, it's not necessarily the best financial choice. I think I
Well,
lose money with practically every short story that I write.
really?
But I just really love doing them. And
Yeah.
because I've been on this six-year project, I only wrote one short piece in that whole time, and I need to get back to it.
When do you like to write? Is there a certain time or a moment in the
Yeah,
mornings?
well, I started out as an afternoon writer because I'm just not a morning person. So
Ah,
I would write
okay.
in the afternoon, and then I became a late afternoon writer, and then I
Mm,
became a late afternoon, early evening writer, and then I became an evening writer, and now I'm a late at night writer. And it's just when I'm feeling most alive and creative. So now I write uh, between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m., something
really?
like that.
You're a
Yeah,
night owl now.
I am. Well, I always was. I just didn't write at night, but
Huh.
now I do.
I was wondering. I'm like, well, he's an hour behind me,
Yeah.
and I'm an early morning guy. Like
Mhm.
that's when I feel like I'm not a
I wish
writer.
I were. I
Yeah,
always
I get
wanted
up.
to be a morning person, but I'm just not. I spend
mm,
the first
I
hours of being awake just dragging myself from one stupid thing to another.
Well, you gotta have a big cup of
Talking
coffee.
coffee. Yeah.
Yeah, I love coffee. Yeah, I'm an early guy, so
Yeah.
that's when I feel like I'm at my best.
You're from
Like I'm more
Wisconsin. Of
alert.
course you love coffee. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I have to. That and
Yeah.
cheese, right? My
Mhm.
little
Yeah.
fondue
Right.
and yeah. Yeah, I actually we we made lasagna yesterday for dinner. My wife had
No.
her
Yeah.
dad come over and she's got a
Oh, nice.
killer lasagna recipe and just
Uh,
loaded it baby with cheese and shredded cheese.
oh my.
Oh, it's
Oh,
good.
you're making me hungry now. Stop it.
Hey, I'm telling you, sir, if I
Yeah.
can fly you out for dinner and we make you lasagna, you'd love it. And that's the truth.
Okay. Yeah.
You ever get back over this way?
Now and again, yeah, because I still have a lot
Yeah.
of relatives up on the Iron Range. And
Okay.
so I go by and visit there and, check out the haunts of my childhood. Duluth is a really different city now. Boy.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I suppose, eh?
Mhm.
They you a football fan?
Uh, I don't have time, unfortunately, but
Yeah.
no, I'm
I'm
not.
not
Yeah.
I'm not either. I just wanted to
Yeah.
know because there's always
Yeah.
been that rivalry with the Packers and the Vikings, so that's why and the
Yeah.
Bears.
Yeah.
Might as well throw them in the
Mhm.
mix. But yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have time for that stuff either. So what else is new besides you getting back into writing? Everything you look good, everything
Oh, well,
just
thanks.
flowing? Yeah.
It's just, incredibly busy, and most of the things that occupy my time are stuff that aren't gonna matter in a year, but I have to do them now anyway, right? So, for instance, StreamYard, where you're recording this,
Yeah.
took me 45 minutes to get on with
Really?
everything working. Yeah. So I'm
Oh
I'm
my
glad I
goodness.
gave myself an hour to get on because I know how technology works when I do it, right? But
Oh
it
my
it
word.
just kept insisting that my mic and my camera were not working, or rather that the software refused to allow it to work, and I would go and change the settings and nothing, nothing, nothing. And then I realized it was a confusion of 2 browsers
Yeah, well that's
because
right.
I'm
We were
using
talking about that
Apple, so
earlier.
the Apple browser is different from the Google browser, and the Apple browser is set as my default, and every time it was loading a new page, it would load it in the Apple browser, which does not work with StreamYard.
Well, now we all
And
know
so I
that, folks.
finally had to just shut that down and not let it come back, and anyway, the air around me turned blue for at least half an hour, I think, just
I
from all
feel
the
terrible
language I
for
was
this.
using. Yeah.
I feel terrible for that. Well, that's why I gave you my
Okay,
number. You should have
not your
called me
fault.
if there well,
Yeah,
we could have figured it out.
yeah,
Just checking my notes over here of certain things I just wanted
okay,
to ask you because I know it's been a while and I didn't want to. I just wanted to keep it vague and simple and fun.
yeah,
I don't really like to get too in depth, but there were some characters and situations that I wanted to ask you about because it was even my friends were like Because I tell my buddies in the book club who a guest I'm gonna have on, and they're like, "You gotta
Uh,
ask him this. You gotta ask him this." I'm like, "Settle
okay.
down, settle down. I'm not gonna overwhelm the guy here. We just have a fun conversation." So we touched on you're a gamer too. You did a lot of the
Yeah.
RPGs. You still
Oh
game?
yeah. I still game. I'm not doing RPGs much due to just um, lack of time on the part of.
Yeah,
See, it was when we were all poor writers together. Me and George R. R. Martin and Melinda Snodgrass and Victor Milan and Daniel Abraham later.
that's kind of
Uh,
how you pass time, right?
RPGs were inexpensive entertainment that we could all enjoy, right?
Yes,
And then everybody became successful. George more than anybody. So with half the group living in Hollywood for half the year, and others I was flying out to do other projects and stuff like that. I was the one who got left behind in New Mexico, just going, hey, come back, we want a game. But
I
it
got the
was just
table
difficult
ready.
to get my gaming group together. And I haven't quite built another one.
Hmm,
I have lots of ideas for RPGs I'd like to run, but I just haven't been able to find the time.
fine, yeah. Well, it's good that you're staying busy though. I mean, that's good. It
Yeah.
occupies you, keeps you moving, keeps things rolling.
This can be a solitary job, but it's only a lonely job if you let it be,
Hmm,
right? I mean, you are working at a keyboard wrestling with yourself for half the day, and that's solitary. But then,
yeah,
if you just stay alone, then it becomes a lonely thing. And so fortunately, I have a lot of good friends here and elsewhere in the world, um, that that make it a pleasant place to be.
yeah. Well, I'll be honest with you, sir. You seem like a hell of a guy.
Well,
True
thank you.
gentleman. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wanted to do stuff that was not writing. I mean, both
Yeah.
because it would be interesting, but I just needed to get out of that headspace part of the time. So that's one reason that I do karate. That's a reason that I do scuba, um, and it gives me material to write about. If
Yeah.
there's a scene where Jason is diving a coral reef, right, on this alien world, that comes right out of my own life,
I was just gonna
where
say
you're
when
yeah,
you're a
where you're
scuba
you're
diver.
there, you're looking at the corals and the fish and everything, and you realize that everything you're looking at is alive. The things that look like rocks are alive, the fish are alive, the plants are alive, the animals that look like plants are alive. And that was when I realized that was quite a revelation, actually.
Yeah. Well, that I mean, when I learned that you scuba, which
Mhm.
that's a whole wild experience all on its own.
Yeah.
How far have you ever been down? If you don't mind me asking.
Uh, no more than 130 feet, because that's
Okay.
that's the limit for a sport diver, and that's what I am.
That's what okay.
I'm not a
Yeah.
serious deep diver. I don't do, you know, rescue work. I don't do a lot of stuff.
Okay.
At one point, my karate teacher wanted us all to do some kind of benevolent work for the community, and I thought, um, I'm a scuba diver. I could, take a course in rescue diving, and because there are irrigation ditches around where I live, and so sometimes small children drown,
Yeah, yeah.
and you have to
Yeah.
be fetch them out, and so I was thinking of doing that, and I talked to a friend who was a rescue helicopter pilot, and he said it's the worst job in the world. And I thought maybe I'll just work at the food bank. Uh, so
The soup kitchen.
I mean, bringing dead babies up
Yeah, that would
when
that's
they've been
not
underwater for a while, that's yeah, it's not a great thing.
no. No, that's a tough job. I live next door to a
Mhm.
guy that works on the rescue squad, the ambulance.
Uh-huh.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's I mean, different situations, but dealing with
Mhm.
victims and bad.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's. I don't think I could handle that. I did some CPR and emergency training when
Mhm,
I used to work in a
mhm.
shipyard, so
Right.
we did a lot of excuse me, you know, situations come up. There's tanks that you
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
crawl in. They got to be air tested. And the air is bad. You could pass out in a second. It's,
Mhm. Right.
serious stuff. So yeah, that's not a job I'd like to have. That's for sure.
Yeah, I've done those classes too for the karate school. Just particularly when I was teaching, I want to know how to handle emergencies.
Yeah. Well, especially if you're, sparring and something happens. Hmm.
Yeah, well, it's a contact sport and things do
Yeah.
happen, so
Yeah.
I've lost track of the number of bones I've broken.
Really?
Yeah.
So yeah,
I just seem particularly prone to it, I don't know why, because the X-rays show that I got big, strong bones, but somehow,
you must just go hard. That's all right.
um, well, but I see I break bones outside of class too. I mean, I I broke my foot walking down across a parking lot,
Well,
and
that's probably from
my
all
leg
the
just
abuse.
my foot just went out from under me and it snapped.
Oh man, that's terrible.
Yeah.
But that's probably from all the years kicking and stuff.
Well, maybe. I don't know. I that's one of those things I can't explain. I have the weirdest luck of anyone I know, so, but it's been balanced by some good luck over the years.
Well, yeah, you've your career's been pretty interesting. You
Yeah.
you've had a you've I don't know how else to explain it, but like thank you for creating magic. That's one
Oh,
way that I
well
explain it to everyone. Like you
thank
guys,
you. That's
you
very gracious.
yeah, you writers make that feeling when you really
Mhm.
nail it for us, the
Yeah,
readers and
yeah,
everyone. And I always want to say thank you and how appreciative I am of that because it's something
yeah.
special. You
Mhm.
got a creative mind.
Yeah. Yeah, lucky me.
So yeah. So was there any talk after the series for you to write more or any did they have any other ideas? Because I mean,
Um,
to me, you're a
the
keeper unless
timing
you had other
probably didn't work
business.
out. We did yeah. I did talk to the editor about an idea I had for another Star Wars series. I won't go into what it was, but,
Sure. No, that's okay.
and, that time was not right. They had plans for other things that they wanted to do.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't have to that's fine. I, I
Yeah,
had no idea though, but that's interesting.
yeah,
When you were in these meetings with everyone, like
right.
was George ever involved or on the phone or
No,
was there any
no, he has people for that. I
Okay, so
did I like to say I had lunch with George, right? Which meant that he and I were in the same room eating lunch, just not together. And George Lucas is very protective of his privacy. I was told, if you meet him in the corridor, you may not interact with him.
really?
Don't even nod hello. Don't even, yeah,
Wow.
and it's fine for him. It would strike me as really unnatural, but
Yeah, me too, right
um,
away. It's like,
yeah, but he just doesn't want people making a fuss over him. And so if he approaches you, you can talk to him, um, but you can't approach him on your own.
wow. Well, if I ever had the chance, I'd probably ask him how much money he had in his wallet and if I could borrow a
Uh-huh.
10.
Yeah.
No, no. Yeah, I guess he
I
kind of
have to
gives
say,
off that.
Skywalker Ranch is just an awesome place. It is
Yeah,
amazing. Yeah, I mean, the special effects happen in these brick buildings that look as if they were like a New England mill from the mid-19th century, but it's got all of this up-to-date modern CGI stuff in there. The main house that, George Lucas lived in, with his kids, he just didn't live there when I was there, but now it's just kind of a place for meetings. It's brilliantly designed. It looks like a little, um, Queen Anne style Victorian home, right? And then once you get in it, you realize it's huge. It's just so well proportioned. You don't realize it's huge until you can actually get lost in it, right?
Yeah.
But it just looks like a modest little house from the outside. It's bigger on the inside. It's a TARDIS. I don't know.
Hmm. So when you went out there when they took you out there when you got involved in the project?
Yeah, that was for the initial planning session.
Wow. Right to the
Yeah,
spot.
yeah, and that was great. There were a whole bunch of creative people that were contributing to that, and that was pretty nifty.
Yeah. So that's where they brought you all and said, "Here's what we're looking for. This is what we're gonna
Yeah,
do."
yeah.
It was
All
just a
all the
day
people
thing,
they
or
could get. Yeah. Sorry?
it was just a day thing, or were you there for a few days?
I was there for a weekend or weekend
Okay.
worth of time. Might have been in the middle of the week. I don't remember, but I was there for 2 nights,
Wow.
and there was, uh, the middle day was meetings all day into the evening.
Wow. Yeah, they don't mess around, I guess. And I'm
No.
probably sure that place was pretty secure with you couldn't just kind of
Yeah.
go wandering around and check stuff
Um,
out.
actually, I got a tour, so that was nice.
I
The
envy
coach
you for
house is
that.
also very nice. I enjoy that.
Yeah.
I love the idea that it has a coach house. This was built in the '80s or whenever, but
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard that it's just mind blowing when you're there. A
mhm.
few other people I've talked to that have been there too, and it's just like
You know, it's
it's
and
kind
it's
of
really
overwhelming.
beautiful, and it's not overboard in any way,
Yeah.
it just fits into that, Marin landscape really nicely.
Yeah. I was just wondering that because I think your writing style and how you describe things and the descriptions and in the story and the flow of it,
Mhm. Yeah.
it would be great to see, have you done more for the
Uh-huh.
universe, for the galaxy.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Well, I would certainly consider it if the offer ever came again, but I think that
that's good.
all of the cast of characters has changed. It's a new generation
Yeah.
everywhere now, both at the publisher and at Lucasfilm, I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't think everybody's that was in worked
Yeah,
with the story group. I don't believe is
right, yeah,
in it anymore.
and it would be Disney now too.
Right. Right, and they have their own direction of things. Do
Yeah.
you keep
Well,
up? Do
different
you
different
watch?
faces, and they're sort of after different things, I think. I think they would be less protective of the material
Yeah.
than Lucas would be, right?
Yeah. Do you keep up with any of the new shows or the series or anything like that?
I've kept up with any movies that appeared in theaters. I don't subscribe to the Disney channels, so, I've never seen any of the side stuff on there.
New stuff?
Um, yeah,
Okay.
'cause,
Just wondering.
I think Disney should pay their writers.
Yeah. I think all you guys deserve that's one thing I'll say is teachers
Uh-huh.
and writers need to make more money.
I'm with you there. I've been both, so yep.
Yes. I feel for teachers, especially
Mhm.
now. I have
Mhm.
one of my buddy's wives is a teacher and it's things have changed, that's for sure.
Mhm. Yeah.
But you guys are underpaid in my opinion.
Well, thank you.
Yes. The whole writer
Yeah.
strike thing and that was the
Uh,
whole mess.
it had a happy ending, I have to say. It's the writers have always been in the front on that, and what surprised me was that the Actors Guild went out with them and held on the longest because
Yeah.
the actors historically, the actors have caved right away,
Yeah, it
and
was
in this
always the
case,
writers.
the actors stood up and they were great.
Yes. Well, I mean, what's your thoughts on AI?
Well,
Like I know
they're sort
there's
of they're sort of confused, but I don't, you know, AI is taking away people's jobs now. Okay. There are, if I were made my living as a translator, that would be a definite threat
Yeah.
because AI can translate pretty well.
Yes, it
It
can.
doesn't get all the nuances, and sometimes it makes rather ridiculous mistakes. But then they need an editor, not a translator. So, um,
Yeah,
you know,
I've dabbled with it a
so
little bit.
yeah,
It's pretty wild with what
and
it can do.
uh, yeah. Well, and now Microsoft is installing AI as an option on all of their software because they own GPI, right?
Yeah, it's all about money, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
and and having um, seen the sort of thing that happens when AI tries to write fiction, I don't exactly feel threatened. I don't think they can write like me. They might be able to
No,
write like some people, but I have a you know style that is mine.
that's right.
And also, a lot of it, the AI is getting stupider because AI invents a lot of stuff when it doesn't have an actual answer, right? So then that ends up in the record, and then the AIs scrape that record and think that
Yeah.
the nonsense is real, and they'll just keep. So a friend of mine, Charlie Strauss, is a writer up in Scotland, and he asked ChatGPT, um, "Tell me 5 fun facts about Charlie Strauss." And the 5 facts popped up, and they were either true or at least plausible. And they said, "Tell me 5 more fun facts about Charlie Strauss." And it was half plausible, but not true, and half complete fantasy. And then he said, "Okay, tell me 5 more fun facts about Charlie Strauss." And they were all made up. And now all that stuff is in a record somewhere, right? And it's being scraped by all
It's
the artificial intelligences.
yeah. Yeah, it's just gonna keep
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to say about it really. I mean, it's impressive, but then just
Mhm.
like what you just mentioned, then now you have that. Now you
Yeah,
take
yeah.
that and add and multiply that with a bunch of different things.
Uh-huh, right.
So you're gonna have one big bowl of
Yeah.
whatever. And especially what they're doing now with taking people's voices and adding them
Uh-huh.
into things. I mean, that's I
Yeah.
don't know. Technology.
I have a friend, Steve Barnes, who's writing a Star Wars novel, as we
Yeah.
speak,
Yep.
and he's having it read to him, by, oh, I don't remember, but you can have your work read to you in the voices of different actors, right? So
Really?
if I want yeah. So, if I want Jodie Foster to read my novel, I can have her do
Yeah.
it. It'll just be for
That's
me, 'cause she's not getting paid.
yeah. That's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you still keep in contact with all some of the people you used to work with, and like you have a
Oh, yeah.
group, good friends, and
Oh, yeah, it's all one vast group now, all of fandom and the writers and everything. It's big enough so that there are little subsets. I mean, when I joined, there weren't that many science fiction fans. We all had to be fans of the same thing.
yeah,
And then the Trekkies happened
yeah.
around that
Then they
time,
came in.
so they got their own thing, but
Yeah.
they still went to our stuff, right? Um,
Well, I mean, a
and then you have
majority of people
sub-fandoms.
are fans of both.
Yeah. I mean, there's a Finnish group that does English country dancing, right? Like dances that Jane Austen might have done, right?
Yeah.
And there are groups that do that throughout. the world, but they aren't fans, and this group is. So it's a special thing for science fiction fans to do these dances in their little group. And it's kind of fascinating and very interesting, that you can spin off almost anything from
Yeah.
us, right?
Yeah. Well, it's a vast galaxy, right?
Yeah, right.
How much time do you have, sir? I don't want to take up much
I
of your
don't have a
time or
lot more time. I think I have
no.
yeah, maybe another 10 minutes. Is that good?
Yeah. No, I know you're busy.
Okay.
I didn't want to keep you and it's getting later in
Yeah.
the afternoon.
I just have an appointment later this afternoon, so
Oh, okay. Well, we can wrap it up then so you can get prepared. That's all right.
okay.
I really appreciate you taking the time. And it's fun just hearing some of your story and
Oh,
your
I've had a great
backstory.
time, because I haven't revisited these memories in a while
No? Oh,
because
well,
my
good. I'm
well,
glad.
my work has taken me elsewhere, right?
Yeah.
So it's great to think about all this stuff again.
Yeah.
I
Well,
really
when
I
we
really enjoyed writing Destiny's Way, and I wasn't sure whether I would, you know, because 'cause I'd never done work made for hire before. And
honestly, sir, not just because I'm talking to you, it's
uh-huh.
probably it's my favorite right now. Like
Oh,
out of
well, okay.
everything I read, like seriously, like it's
Mhm. Oh, well, thank you, thank you.
yeah, you really nailed it. I'm not BSing. I
Yeah,
was
okay,
really
thank you.
enthralled in the book,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, when the
hardcore.
book came out, the reaction was mixed. There were people who really hated it. There were people who thought it was the
Really?
best ever. There weren't a whole lot of people in the middle.
Really?
Because it wasn't how they had pictured these characters, maybe. I had my own take on the characters. Um, people got really angry that I depicted Mara Jade as being happy, and I thought, why wouldn't she be at this stage in her life? She's had a dangerous pregnancy, but it resolved well, right? I mean, she had the curse on her, but it's not there anymore. She was separated from the husband that she loved, but now she's not. So I
Yeah.
thought, I want to see what Mara Jade is like when she's at play, because she hasn't had the opportunity to play for an awful long time. But there were people who hated that. They wanted her to be dragging herself around with a thundercloud over her head, raining on her, right? And that
Yeah.
was not where she was in this book.
Hmm. No. No, all the characters I thought were great. I never really
Yeah,
thought of that getting mixed reactions because I never
right.
read them obviously as they came out.
Yeah.
Here it's
But I I
22.
I I haven't heard any negative reactions to that book for a long time. They've all been really positive. So I think people who've come to it now, are liking it a lot. So
Yeah.
I'm very happy. I do this to be remembered, and now I'm being remembered. Cool.
Yeah. I'm glad. Like I said, thank you very much for getting back to me. You're very quick responding and I appreciate that. Like this
Yeah,
is
I'm not always quick responding, but I happen to be home
well, it
right
was
then. Yeah.
I think I send my emails out pretty early in the morning, so
Uh-huh.
but
Yeah. Well, probably
yeah.
when I'm still asleep, but yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I get up at 3 a.m. That's when I get up every day.
That's when I go to bed.
Yeah. Oh, so maybe if I get up a little sooner, I'll hit you quicker and you'll see it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing some
All
of your
right.
memories and some of your times and where you're headed. I'll link your site,
It's been a pleasure.
everything.
Thanks for
Yeah.
inviting me.
Yes. Well, there you have it, folks. Mr. Walter John Williams, Destiny's Way, New Jedi Order. And until next time,
Adios.
see
All
you
right.
guys soon.
Bye-bye.